Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice. And welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a comic book graphic novel that I read, one that is about caped crusaders and secret societies. I am referring to Batman R.I.P. by Grant Morrison, with art by Tony Daniel, Sandu Florea, Lee Garbett, and Trevor Scott, among various other people. This is a pretty good art, pretty good comic in terms of that art. Maybe not so much in terms of story, but I will get to that later. Once again, this is by Grant Morrison. For those who don't know, Grant Morrison was a comic book writer, writing a lot of Batman stories. He wrote Batman and Son, which I've been meaning to read, as well as Batman and Robin Reborn, Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on a Serious Earth, which might be my favorite Batman story. I don't know for sure yet. I still have to go through all of them. But Grant Morrison is probably one of my favorite comic book writers because they have a very interesting touch. They explore a lot more of the psychological side of Batman, which I appreciate. Without further ado, let's talk about Batman R.I.P. I will do a summary, a little bit of an analysis, and we will move on from there. So Batman R.I.P. starts with Batman showing up to Arkham Asylum. He is questioning the Joker, as happens in a lot of Batman comic stories. It just begins with Batman talking to Joker about some element that'll be recurring throughout the series or the specific story as a theme. So Batman is asking Joker, like, who is coming, because he knows that a secret organization is after him, but he doesn't know why, and he thinks Joker has the answers. But Joker is not giving him any help or any tips or any clues on exactly who is coming. He's just showing playing cards, which Batman kind of guesses based on what those cards show. Meanwhile, Robin and Alfred are particularly worried about Batman because they're worried about his mental health, because he keeps talking about the Black Glove organization, but there's no proof that they actually exist, and so they're worried about Batman going at the vigilantism a little too hard, because he's worried about perceived enemies that may or may not be real. Meanwhile, the Black Glove actually break into Arkham Asylum, and they even ask Joker to join them or to help them out with their particular cause to undermine Batman. And Joker, I think he actually agrees to it, although it doesn't specify whether or not he agrees to it. So the Black Glove attack the Batcave, which enables them to hold Alfred hostage. But they also inject Bruce Wayne, with a bunch of heroin and put him into one of the less well-to-do neighborhoods in Gotham City, where he seems to develop a bit of amnesia and is unsure of who he is. Bruce begins seeing pictures or visions of Zur and R in his head. I'll spell it out around here so you can get a good understanding of what that is. But he begins seeing it, and then he dresses up and makes his own purple Batman costume and begins hallucinating Batmite, an older DC character. And so Zur and R Batman is a bit more unhinged and this version of Batman, it was created to be a failsafe in case someone attacks Bruce Wayne psychologically. They can have this version of Batman, which doesn't rely on Bruce Wayne, but is purely unhinged and crazed and willing to attack and hurt anyone who gets in his way. So the Black Glove organization finally manages to fully take over Arkham Asylum, but the police can't do anything because Jim Gordon was lured to Wayne Manor, and Wayne Manor was booby-trapped. But very fortunately, Damian Wayne, who is Batman's son, manages to show up and save Jim. And it's around this time that Damian is given an identity within the Bat organization. So Bruce is trying to take him on and train him as a son, rather than simply disregard him and leave him with Ra's al Ghul and company. So Batman finally shows up at Arkham Asylum and takes on the Joker. The Joker gains an advantage, though, due to the shenanigans of the Black Glove organization, and Batman is seemingly defeated when he learns that his girlfriend at the time, Jezebel's Jet, was actually working with the Black Glove organization. And so the Black Glove buries Batman alive, and they take the radio that he was carrying on him back to Arkham Asylum. But it turns out that Bruce or Zur-En-Arrh planned for this, and the radio actually has a transmitter that locks down Arkham Asylum. So the Black Glove, very cleverly, no longer has control over Arkham Asylum, as they pretty much brought their own imprisonment into the asylum. But the Joker kind of realizes that the Black Glove organization is underestimating Batman, and so he places money, as all the members have placed money on who would have won between Batman and Joker, and he places money on Batman to win. And sure enough, Batman manages to break free of the coffin he was buried in and escapes, and then travels back to Arkham Asylum, where he manages to beat up some members of the Black Glove organization, while other members of the Bat family take out Joker and any of the remaining members of the Black Glove too. And so it's just Batman and Dr. Hurt at this point, where Dr. Hurt is getting into a helicopter, and he announces that he is actually Bruce Wayne's father, that he originally intended for both Bruce and Martha Wayne to die, and he would have faked his death so that he could go on to do other, Thomas Wayne things. It's not exactly clear, but both Bruce and Alfred know that this can't be Thomas Wayne, because their identities don't fully match up. And so Batman attacks Dr. Hurt, and his helicopter sinks into Gotham Harbor. I don't exactly know what happens to Dr. Hurt, but Batman later turns up and starts arresting the rest of the members of the Black Glove organization as Joker smiles in his prison cell, and that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there is a bit to talk about with this story. The first thing I want to talk about is Bruce's mental state. The mental state of Batman or Bruce Wayne is at the heart of a lot of not only Grant Morrison stories, but also at the heart of so many other Batman stories. One thing I can think of is Batman Year One, where Batman's obsession and focus on avenging his parents at all costs leads him to become Batman. Although I don't think the writers fully intended to touch so deeply upon his mental health, but it does become a large part of the Hush storyline, as well as the Nightfall storyline, and even Arkham Asylum, a series, House on a Serious Earth, which was also written by Grant Morrison. So it's a central idea, and the question is Bruce himself insane or mentally troubled because of his obsession, and is he dressed his choice to dress up as a bat? Is that detrimental not only to himself but also the villains he's chasing down, the criminals he puts away, the people of Gotham in general? Is it detrimental to have such a troubled man dressing up as a bat? They do attempt to answer that question a little more in depth here. especially by having Jezebel Jet talk about that with Bruce Wayne. Allow me to read you a quote from this. "They're all too scared of you. Oh, come on, that's not true. Of course it is. You spent your whole life and billions of dollars making yourself into a person who scares people. You wanted them to be frightened, but that price of that fear is truth and intimacy and all the things that hold together normal human relationships. They're scared to say it, but I love you, Bruce. I'm not scared of you. I can say what they won't, because somebody has to. It was so brave of you, Bruce, so ingenious to make yourself into the great dark knight who wasn't there for you when you needed him. But all this is a disturbed little boy's response to his parents' death. You're over 30 years old. It can't go on. You have to stop and take a deep breath. You could use your wealth and influence in other ways. You have to think about what you're doing to yourself and to impressionable young people. You need to talk to somebody. My father was shot in front of me too, Bruce, but these sad, blood-splattered little superhero costume, the scars, the gigantic underground museum of death and technology. Oh, Bruce, poor Bruce. What if you're not well?" And I really like that Grant Morrison especially is bringing this kind of thought process up, especially calling his Batcave a museum of death and technology. Because if you recall, like, Batman has a lot of weird technology in the Batcave, but he also has a lot of what I want to say souvenirs from his fight with various Gotham villains, which only like a crazed kind of mentally ill person would keep those souvenirs, like, that have caused death and destruction. Whatever it may be, no matter how harmless it may seem, it's still a reflection that Batman is sort of turning his fights with villains into trophies, which doesn't seem mentally well. Like, Batman could do anything else with his money. Like, Jezebel Jet has a very good point here. It really seems like Batman hasn't fully gotten over the death of his parents, and as a response, he's pretending to be a costume vigilante, or actually being a costume vigilante. This isn't anything new. There have been tons of comics before that have said this, but none have said it so bluntly and outwardly. And the idea of Zur-En-Arrh seems to confirm these ideas that Bruce Wayne at some point knew that he needed to separate the Bruce Wayne identity from the Batman identity. So he created Zur-En-Arrh to be all of Batman, all of the crazed fighting machine, like no nonsense type personality, which allows him to zoom through Gotham and take down an organization like the Black Glove. There is some doubt to this, like, because Jezebel Jet does turn out to be a villain, and she was manipulating Bruce the whole time. But even if she is a villain, like, she still has a point. He's in a museum of death and technology. He became a Cape Crusader. He could do so much more with that money, and I don't think it was intentional for like Grant Morrison to have a valid point here, but they still have a great point. The point being that Batman is insane. Batman is mentally troubled. There's something up with Batman, and he needs to resolve that unresolved mental health issues from his childhood and even afterwards. Otherwise, he's going to become a villain one day. Another interesting thing about this story is it kind of vindicates Joker, because in the typical view of Joker, like, he wants to bring Batman down to his level, or he wants to show that Batman is just as crazy as all the villains that he's fighting. And so my question, I guess, to you all out there, you can answer this in the comments, is, does the Zur-En-Arrh personality prove that the Joker is right? That by creating a separate identity to understand the Joker, that means that that Joker on some level is right, that Batman has to be brought down to the Joker's level to be able to defeat the Joker and to truly solve the problems of crime in Gotham. Because that really does seem like this proves that proves the Joker's right. And I think Grant Morrison even admits that so far when Batman is facing the Joker, and Joker notes, like, you have to be insane to understand me, and even you recognize that. So I think that's an interesting aspect of this comic that not a lot of other writers have really looked into. They've come up to that point, especially with the death in the family, but they've never, leaped into it and fully acknowledged it, like Grant Morrison has here. Despite these interesting things about the comic, I do think there are a lot of issues with the comic book itself, with this entire story arc. For one, I think the conflict resolves itself a little too easily. Like, suddenly Jezebel is evil, and like, she's been manipulating Bruce all along. That's a little too easy. Like, this is the first I'm hearing about Jezebel Jet, and right away she's evil. It's just more proof that Bruce Wayne can't be with somebody. But why can't he be with somebody? It just seems like the writers of Batman comics see Bruce Wayne as having to suffer as Batman alone, but he can have people around him. And it's just they seem to refuse to actually do that. And then another problem is that at the end of the comic, Bruce Wayne, or Batman, reveals that he had planned for brainwashing all along, knowing that Dr. Hurt was planning something. And so he developed the Zurt and R personality as a last resort against someone trying to psychologically harm him. And my problem with that is it's a little too easy, and it shows that Batman didn't really actually struggle because none of this was a real problem. There were no stakes if Batman planned for this all along, and it kind of undermines any threat that the Black Glove had for him, or even Dr. Hurt, because Dr. Hurt just seems like an easy person to defeat. There might actually be, further issues down the road that elaborate on Dr. Hurt, but I don't know which ones those are. So as far as this book goes, like, he didn't seem like that much of a threat compared to Hush, or Thomas Elliot, who seemed like a big threat in that specific comic book. So comparing the two, this feels like a really weak criminal organization and a really weak story, especially because Batman had planned all along. Another issue with this is that Batman's friends seem to solve everything. Robin and Nightwing and a whole bunch of other superhero organizations show up to defeat a criminal enterprise. And if that's the case, then it really... I don't know why they're there. If Batman could so easily defeat the Black Glove, why does he need the help of Robin and Nightwing and the weird Guardians, especially that guy in the night suit, whose name I don't know? But it really seems like everything was easy and he had the numbers on his side as well as planned. So it doesn't seem like there's an actual challenge or a threat against Batman in this specific story. And then the last thing I want to say is, like, what does the Black Glove even want? Like, what are their goals? If their goal is to take over Gotham, then the solution would be to kill Batman pretty quickly. But all they do is they give him heroin, which allows him to, forget who he is briefly. And then they have him fight the Joker and bury him alive. And if they really wanted to control Gotham, what they should have done was just shoot him in the face a couple times. It doesn't really seem like they want Gotham, and they're a victim of their own hubris, thinking that, like, they have the numbers against Batman. But it's not like they're hoisted by their own petard. What the problem is that they're just a stupid organization, and their plans don't make a lick of sense. Like, if their entire plan is to humiliate Bruce Wayne, there are a lot of better ways that don't put them in danger of getting caught and don't result in, like, a great number of them getting murdered by the Joker. So the entire Black Glove organization is really stupid. Possibly one of the worst threats that I've ever read in a Batman comic book before. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Batman R.I.P. Comic book that I heard good things about, but which kind of disappointed me in the end, and I largely because I'm unclear of like what the Black Glove even wants, and the story seems to get resolved way too easily. There doesn't seem to be a lot of struggle on Batman or Bruce Wayne's part, even though the story description kind of indicates that there was supposed to be a great struggle. So I'm not sure Grant Morrison navigated this story as well as they could have. Ultimately, I'm going to say I don't recommend it. Some people might find enjoyment in the art or some elements of the story, but ultimately, I think this is a skippable comic book in terms of rating it amongst the other Batman stories that have already come out and came out afterwards. So anyways, if you have something to say about my review, or you want to, if you read this before and you want to comment, do so below. I would love to hear from you. Let's talk about Batman. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so other people can find out about the works of Grant Morrison and maybe explore this if this is to their liking. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and secret organization travels. Farewell.